Welcome to NovoEdTalks, where we reveal real-world strategies and expert insights from learning and development professionals. In every episode, we chat with practitioners, course designers, learning strategists, and business leads. We hear about their experiences in the learning industry and predictions for the profession and the trends that they're seeing. But before we get started, a little bit about NovoEd. Founded at Stanford's Social Algorithms Lab in 2012, NovoEd is a people-centric, capability-building platform that combines social and collaborative learning to drive performance readiness at scale. Through cohort-based experiences centered around human interaction, NovoEd taps into collective wisdom, placing each learner at the center of perspective, application, and expertise. Large enterprises such as 3M, GE, Marriott International, and Nestle partner with NovoEd to accelerate their critical initiatives, reconnect teams, and achieve rapid alignment through learning that is felt, experienced, and swiftly transformed into impact. Now, let's meet our guest for today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NovoEdTalks podcast, a space for training trailblazers to get real. My name is Melissa Fisk, and I'm the producer of the NovoEdTalks podcast. And today I am joined by Arlene Mabrey, who is a DEI learning development leader at a global professional services company. As a DEI learning development manager, she is passionate about creating spaces where psychological safety thrives. Arlene is a continuous learner and believes that becoming an inclusive leader is a journey. She believes authenticity is key and strives to help others be their true selves. Arlene is a certified coach, DEI practitioner, network diagnostic practitioner, and Scrum master. Known as a disruptor, she embraces change and agile methodologies to drive innovation and success. Arlene, I cannot wait to get into our interview today. Thank you so much for joining us on the NovoEdTalks podcast.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, why don't you start by just introducing yourself and talking a little bit more about your background?
Well, I say all that we do, everything we do, it's a journey to where you're ultimately probably created to end up. But then we go through the ebbs and flows to get there. I've been practicing in this space for a very long time. When I went to college, first off, I was an education major thinking I would do early childhood education. Realized after my first internship that this really wasn't for me. And so my career, I ended up working in finance. But wherever I went, whatever I put my hand to, I always was creating training programs all around the world. And someone asked me once, where I'd like to be in 5 years. If there were no limits, where would I be? And I immediately said, I know exactly where I'd be. I'd be somewhere in the world where there would be some kind of iconic landscape like the Eiffel Tower or something in the background as I rushed off to lead a training or coaching session for a group of very hungry individuals. And after that, and that was like 20 years ago when I said that, in just a really casual conversation, the person then came back and said, Arlene, that's not a real hard ask. If you think about it, you're already doing a lot of that. And that's when I got serious. And I then really managed to let my career take me away from finance and accounting so that I ended up ultimately full-time focused on helping people expand, grow. People, they will refer to me as a thirsty learner. I try to stay very relevant, take it all in, but I really enjoy it. And I am excited as the world opens up brand new avenues, and I immediately look for ways to bring that into the programming that I create and introduce people in safe ways so that they can play and stay relevant as they are charting their journey. And so since I work with a lot of adult learners inside of my company, as well as run seminars outside for community groups, what I discover, no matter where we are, people are always hungry to figure out what's that nugget that they need today to be just a little bit better. And so that's what I try to bring.
I love that. That's beautiful and so well articulated. When you talk about, in your role, who are some of the learners that you oversee specifically, and what are the challenges that they face?
So I spend a lot of time working within my company, a lot of senior leaders, people who are really You know how it is when you're on the cusp of that breakthrough, and then that little voice says, "Are you sure you're ready for this?" So I spent a lot of time helping people figure out, all right, yeah, I'm ready for this.
Yeah.
When I am in the world outside, I do a lot of work with organizations where it depends, it can be an audience of religious practitioners that are struggling to align faith and the dictates of the world. And where do they sit in that? And so when I'll do spend a lot of time helping people find those places of bias, because we all have bias,
Mhm.
find those and figure out how do you take that as a place. This is my jumping off point for something new. When I'm with young people and I am running seminars with young people, again, everybody is looking for that voice. And the challenge is, regardless of whether it's a managing director or a person about to walk across the stage in college for the first time and walk into the world, those questions of what's my superpower? That's where I like to start. So whether I am leading a session on how to have a courageous conversation or leading a session on um, imposter syndrome, I like to get people to that spot. What do you say you're bringing? Because that's all that really matters. And then from there, we grow. And it is an amazing, amazing journey.
I love that. And that, echoes what you said in your bio just about like the importance of authenticity on this. And I think that's so great. Such a great jumping off point, because if you don't have that from the jump, you're going to lose.
Mhm.
You're not going to be really authentic with the process.
Yeah.
What would you say some of the biggest workforce development challenges are, and how do you kind of approach those?
Well, this is a perfect time to be having that conversation, because as the landscape changes, we have to be able to adjust, which is why I like being a Scrum Master and having agile methodology as my back pocket, one of my skills,
Yeah.
because it allows me to think about what's really happening in the world. What do professional leaders really need? And so a few years ago, when we first really started talking about AI as a thing that everybody could access,
Mhm.
it was a great opportunity for me to help leaders break through that barrier. And so even when we first started with the metaverse, started building training opportunities there so people could experience not just virtual reality, but augmented reality, so that they could then see, okay, if I can do this, then what can machine learning really do for me? And then it was easier to ease people into, what does it mean to utilize Gen AI and Chat GPT and Copilot? What does it mean to take that into a performance review conversation? So when I do training there, I think the biggest barriers are, we don't know what we don't know. And so helping people to bridge that gap. When I was growing up, my grandfather's favorite poem was The Bridge Builder. And so I hold on to that. And in my profession, I remind myself, and I hear his voice saying, there are others that are coming behind. So I'm building the bridge for them. And so when I create educational opportunities, especially for senior leaders, I want to position them to break the barrier, because they're bringing others along and they need you to be confident that where you're leading them is where they want to go. And so when I spend a lot of time doing training, and I've done training across 10,000 people to 10 people, but the messaging is still the same. And the biggest thing to help people break through is the yes. And so I say to people, what's your yes? What's the reason that you gave yourself this time to step into this learning opportunity with me? And what do you want to hold me accountable to, so that I can get to your yes? But if you don't know what your yes is, it's really hard to open up learning. And then I use, just as all learning practitioners do, what do we need to do to make it sticky? What are the principles in durable learning that I bring in and weave in? What's the storytelling? What's the hook? What's the way? So all of those tools that we all have as practitioners are so needed today. because the landscape keeps moving so fast. But if we go back to what our foundation is as learning practitioners, I think that we surprise ourselves that we are fit for the task
Yeah.
that we have. We are built for it. We've done the work. And our whole job is to turn on a light in somebody else. And that's the beauty of it. People who do
Yeah.
what I do, we love it when you can see in a person's eyes, I got it. Oh my gosh. Really that simple? Yeah, it is. And then personalize. I always want to make sure that I give you enough room to stretch because you got to feel it and then bring you back so you personalize it.
Yeah.
That's what makes the learning stick. And that's what helps get people over those challenges. So that was a long answer to your question.
No, that was perfect. And you said so many great things in there conceptually too. I love that image of the bridge, that these people are building a bridge that others are going to follow on. And that I think, puts a very real concept that these, senior leaders can grasp and be like, okay, this is really important. So I've got to really get into this and then get back to a lot of what you keep saying, just being authentic and being the person. And what they need to really kind of grow in the learning and sit with the learning and have it take. I think that's so important. Moving on to our next question, as the skill sets needed for success can continue to shift, what strategies does your team use or yourself use to ensure the workforce remains adaptable and prepared? I'm sure, you've mentioned how much you rely on agile methodologies. So I'm sure that plays a role, but could you speak to it a little bit more?
Yes. So the biggest benefit to being a practitioner in learning today is that we also get to rely on educating ourselves. So I love, love, love the way Josh Bersin allows you to lean in, learn, and fine tune. I absolutely adore Brandon Hall. So I spend the empowered leaders for women. So I spend a lot of my time making sure I'm in the spaces where the cutting edge leaders are. And so I can make sure, say, okay, how do I incorporate this? How important is that? I do a lot of case study work. And because right now I'm doing a huge, huge relook at something right now and a lot of benchmarking. But because we have access to this information so quickly, it is very easy for me. And it's a regular ritual to say, all right, what are companies that are like size, like offering, what are they doing? Where am I in spaces with them? And so I am a part of different associations and communities where practitioners just like me come together and openly talk about, well, what's the one nugget for 2025 that we need to bring forward? What's that one thing that we really want to make sure? And it's in technology, that's huge. But instead of getting lost in all the different coding languages, what I pull away from it is I need to make sure that I am creating, even if it's just little nuggets in a slide, language that's what they're talking about. So now when we're learning storytelling, I'm building that in to say, if your client is looking to you to help them operationalize, whatever their product is that you're doing for them. Here's some of the things when you think about automation. Here's some of the methodologies. When we think about failing fast and recovering greatly, it opens people up to wherever you want to apply this. When you're leading your teams, innovation occurs when there is space to experiment. And experiments allow you to fail fast and recover greatly. So use that. So that's really how I try and keep people, make sure I'm teaching the right stuff and that the audience is focused on the right things, because I'm not coming in as a thought leader to help you learn Python, but I am coming in to challenge you to see, is this necessary for my team? And if it is, what's the business around it? So that's really how I try to stay relevant with where we are.
Yeah.
It's in the world right now, we have so many things coming at us, so much going on in the governments around the world. And so I do a lot of studying there to see what's changing in India, What's a huge thing that people are talking about in the leadership ranks of their government. So then when I come back and I'm helping you to better understand your privilege, I can tie it back to something that's happening currently in your world.
Yeah.
And asking you, when you think about privilege, it just means that you have agency in a space and influence.
Yeah.
How do we take that new thing and build your agency and influence?
Yeah.
So that's how I try and keep people relevant.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Again, so well put. If you're looking at, your team or a group of leaders, how do you kind of assess and address skills gaps? You just talked about it a little bit, but, do you have other ways or other examples you could share?
So again, meet people where they are. We're walking into, again, I talked about operationalizing something. So we're coming in and we're thinking about, what is your failure methodology to figure out where the widget is broken?
Hmm.
I use that kind of way, fishboning, popcorning, letting people bring those things out so that they can safely determine, do I really have the skills at the level? Because I remind people, you already have a seat at the table. You're in that seat for a reason. So there's something you have already. So now own that. And now let's talk about where you need to grow to. And when we think about skills, it's not as though there's huge things coming all the time, right? We've got the big things. Communication. How's that skill going for you? Influence. How is that showing up for you? And your ability to educate yourself. How is that skill? So when we do skill assessments for the kind of education work I do, I'm not teaching you math. I'm opening up your possibilities to go learn more because you have now identified through my training a reason to need to learn. And you have now created a foundation that says, I have the ability to learn. So I help you to get away from all of those saboteurs in your mind, focus on the beauty and brilliance that you have so you are primed and ready to absorb. And once I can get you there, I can teach you almost anything. And so from a skill standpoint, the biggest thing is I need you open. I need to get you unstuck and open to new ideas.
That's
Personally.
So beautiful again, and just so well put. I feel like that is something, it's like such a almost simple concept, but no one's talking about that and no one's doing that, right? Where, especially for folks in a leadership role, where it's like, hey, you're obviously here, you have something, let's make sure that you're good with that. And then we can go from there. Like, I think that's an amazing approach. Do you have any kind of core KPIs that you use to measure the effectiveness of training or things like that in these situations?
So, because where I play is DEI. And so a lot of what we look at, it's not yes, so that I can keep doing what I do all over the place. Throughput is important. So we always have surveys. What do people get? How are they going to use this? So that's one of the core things. So we have, surveys there. But what really is a strong KPI that I spend a lot of my time preparing to achieve, it's how are the people that are coming through these programs, how are they actually faring against people who don't? And so I let the data come in and tell the story. So if I'm, like I said, during COVID, trained 10,000 people in just a few months to address a concern that was coming up with COVID and infections and all of those things. Well, it was then very easy to be able to benchmark that success. We had a number, I need this many people, but the real benchmark was the effectiveness of the training that resulted in the practitioners actually being able to successfully perform over an extended amount of time compared to those who did not receive the training. And we take that, even when I work with church groups, we come back, I always am looking at, here's what we did together. Now I need to know, what are you going to do with it? And then I'm going to come back in 3 months. What did you do with it? And then use it against a baseline of religious practitioners that didn't have training.
Yeah.
And it's easy to see. If the goal was building your flock, okay, that's the goal that you had. Now this becomes my KPI to say whether or not this was effective. If it is internal to the company I'm at, if we're looking at imposter syndrome, making sure that you are confident and comfortable, when I look at those that have come through, and it's not a direct cause, but it's a correlation between those that went through this. How did they fare against key performance indicators differently from those who did not go through this? And the numbers are amazing. And I love data. So it's really, I use the verbatims, the feedback, yes, but really what I look at is, here's the population that experienced this. What is their engagement score in the overall engagement? When I work with people, since I'm certified through Gallup as well, when I bring people through one-on-one sessions, for them to really understand what the strengths really mean to them, and there's an assessment that we do, I can compare, here are the people that went through one-on-one sessions with licensed people to really get it, as opposed to the people who didn't take advantage of the one-on-one session, but they are in your organization. And you can see where engagement changes. So I use data to really benchmark as a KPI, as this is the baseline.
Yeah.
Because we do this, what did it do to your base? Now, what is this population doing? And 9 times out of 10, that particular population is faring overall better.
Yeah.
They're net better off than those who, for whatever reasons, were not able or didn't choose to be a part of the training that's offered. So hope that helps.
I love how you tie that into, instead of just being like, oh, we're just going to do like a course on DEI. You're tying it into like the overall well-being of the organization's like goals and and how that's playing into that. And I think that's so important. And again, like just a way to make it actually last and stick, make a change.
Yep.
It's great that you're measuring it that way. Do you have like a specific case study or example of an initiative that you've done that you could get into a little bit more detail?
So I did some work. These were, it was a group in San Francisco. It's a national organization, and they do internships with young people in high school. And I came in and did some work with them to help. And it was really some training on Gallup's strengths at their level. So we spent some time really taking people through it and helping them to see who they are. How do you articulate? And then we had these things, and I think I worked with them for like 6 months. So we had a segment where we paused and asked, all right, if you understand who you are, how is that going to translate in your college application? How is that going to translate in your interview? And what we were able to then see, and then we continued, survey. But what we could see, because again, this is a collective group in San Francisco of students from various high schools. So I just had to go back to the guidance counselors and say to them, of students that are in a specific demographic that are going through these things, what is your ratio of those students actually getting their college of choice, or those who have chosen not to go into college, being able to feel confident as they walk across the stage that they're landing the job that they wanted? How many of your students across these 4 different high schools have really, either you don't know anything about them, or they don't have a clear path? And now let's go look at these students that were a part of this program. And what's the difference? And again, let the data tell the story. Well, what the data said was they were far more likely to actually finish college. They were far more likely to land a job in corporate America. One of the reasons was because, as a part of the program, they're interning. As a part of the training, they are coming across well. And here I live in East Tennessee. We have several academies where we have, again, young people. Well, we just had a scholarship fund where we're giving scholarships away, and during interviews. Well, we're in here interviewing. It was very apparent. The students that went through a training program for life, one of the academies, where we have organizations that are always giving back, they were well-spoken, they were well-written, they were more polished, and it was night and day, the difference. And then when I take the same idea of looking at it from that lens into, the company that I work for, we can take a look and see, because again, I am certified in network diagnostics as well. And so when I use that benchmark, when people who have gone through the training to understand how to build an effective network, well, now I've got all of this data, not just in my company, across top companies that use that same diagnostic to tell me, here are people who really got it, who understood it, and how they are faring across several different companies against people of very similar backgrounds, demographics, places, all the things, because they bother to understand that there's a science to connections that will pay dividends to you if you do it well. It was astounding to see in that data work. And you can see Network Diagnostic, if people aren't familiar with it, you can go to their site. You can see that they've been written up in Great Place to Work as this. It seems so simple, but it really is ingenious. What we can do, again, it's everything comes back for me to the same place. I can open you up that you're ready to learn. Then the science of networking, you can take that on. And because now I got all this data from a whole nother company that shows people who get it. I coined it as, you are now a part of the 20% club. 20% of high-performing organizations, only 20% of those people understand what effective networking is and the impact that it has on your career. You simply are in a place because you're listening, you know the right people to put around you. You're getting information faster. Your name is being raised in the right places.
What a great case study too, because that's obviously has such a profound effect, on the world, on like a group of young people. Like that's an amazing thing. That must feel so good to have that.
Yes. We have another organization. We tutor in elementary schools. So needed, so needed. And at the end of the year, right before school starts up again, we have this fair. We give away school supplies and shoes and stuff. And we'll see these children come up because we work inside of at-risk high schools, at-risk elementary schools, and they remember you. And that was that little person, the way their mind worked, reading wasn't easy for them. We've worked together, and I always tell them, I need you to teach me. And you've set them up for success. And so since we continue doing this, then we see them, 10 years later, they're not a statistic. They're walking across the stage. They have the tools. I love education. I believe that it is the secret sauce that allows anybody to reach levels of success that they were put on this earth to reach, but they needed some help to see how they could do it. And I think education is the key to that.
Yeah, that's beautiful and amazing. Switching gears a little bit, what role does technology play in your programs? Like when you're teaching, do you rely on certain tools or platforms?
Again, you know me, I like all the new toys. The new toys. So recently, another company, so I can say the names of other companies that I work with, that there is a woman-owned company. It's called Praxis Labs. And I use their technology. What they do is, it is a simulation coaching. So you're not like in virtual reality, you're on your laptop, but it is, you pick your scenario and it allows you to walk through the conversation and get real-time feedback. So I weave that in to one of my learning programs so that the task was to help people be better able to prepare for orals, right?
Okay.
We all have to do it.
Yeah.
And so once we, I weaved in storytelling. Here's a traditional way for storytelling. This is what we have to do. This is the fundamental. These are the bones. But now you need feedback on what you built. Well, now we Praxis Labs, you go in, here is your conversation. And you can speak to it or type to it. So it'll hit the modality that works best for you.
Yeah.
And it's gut checking all along. And it can be 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever you need. But I love the fact that it starts with, how are you feeling?
That's so cool.
And then you begin the learning piece of it. And then it pauses. How are you feeling now? Because you've now gotten all this feedback. How you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And Then you get to step away from it for yourself. When you're ready, are you done? How was this? Well, then I take, here's what they've done in their own personal thing. Now let's come back to the classroom and now
Yeah.
let's talk through, how ready are you now? And it's the aha of, wow, I was free to be able to be vulnerable where I
Yeah.
might not have been that vulnerable if I was just talking to, the sales lead,
Yeah.
trying to work it all out. So
If no one asked,
yeah, I mean, it's great. So I pulled that one in. There's another technology piece, and what I try really hard to make sure that I weave technology in instead of just sending you away.
Yeah. I
Because,
love that. I just love that concept, weaving it in versus
yeah,
like, hey, here's a tool, go out and do it now, just
yeah,
for the sake of
because
making it
you
easier
need
or
the
whatever.
human. You need
Yeah.
that human connect. You need to, and we learn better when there are other human beings that are around. For whatever reasons, just this is how we're created, to connect with other human beings. Um, So, and again, I've done learnings that are inside of virtual reality. You have to go inside of a headset, and then you'll
Yep.
hear my voice, and they're wandering around with you, helping you understand blockchain.
Love
so,
it.
so if there is any way at all that there's a new toy of any kind, I'm going to find a way to bring it in to whatever it is I'm teaching. If I'm mentoring, if I'm coaching, if I'm leading sessions on particular things, because I want technology to be as natural for people of my generation as it is for my grandchildren.
Yeah.
Because they have technology around them all the time.
Yeah.
And so it's not like it's anything new.
Yeah.
But for some of us, it's like, oh, goodness, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, and so I try to weave it in everything, and even in like Sunday school. I
Yeah.
bring it in so that people can start. So you're always feeling like change is a good thing and I'm hungry for it. So that's
Yeah.
what I try to do, which is why I use technology a lot.
As learning and development and mentor programs have kind of shifted over the last 5 years, especially I'm sure in DEI, what are some key takeaways that you've seen?
So we hold fast to, you cannot be what you cannot see. It is true. It's more than just a catchy phrase. So we find we're challenged today to find ways to make sure that we create systems. And so that's one of the things I'm working on now. Is before, we could be intentional about matching people and setting people up across all companies. One of the some companies, some of the way that they bring people in is partnering you with a mentor right off the bat. Those kinds of things. Well, now as we are finding our way through the new, we know that humans do better when there's connection. We know that it is important that you are known, that in the business world today, a great leader who I respect, he says you must make people actually say your name. And so that can't happen in sterile situations where we need to be afraid to partner with other people, that someone might feel like we've given you a leg up. So what we are doing is we're taking everything we know to be true, all the things that we know that learners really need in order to truly grow their careers. And we're building that into new databases. So in that way, when you go in and you do your question profile, saying what it is you want, where you're trying to go, and you may need help. You may need to talk to a whole bunch of people to figure out where am I trying to really go? But
Yeah.
when you have it, now we're building systems in real time that we're matching you based on you, your desires, your needs. We are still making sure the fundamentals of mentoring, you get the education, you know what it means to be a mentor, and you know what the obligation is to be a mentee. So now when you go in and you have your match, you are both sides of the table, fueled with the education needed to be successful in that as you've defined it. And like I said, it really challenged all of us who, had to watch programs kind of go away in some ways,
Yeah.
but really rebuild. And I think that we are in a position where we're creating a better foundation, because the expectations will be that every person has the obligation to themselves to connect with people that will help you grow. And those who sit on the other side as mentors, there is a benefit to you personally and professionally to get it right. So I have faith and hope that we, even though we're not, grabbing this group and we're putting them with this group, we are creating a platform where anybody can actually figure out how to get what they need and not feel like only the special people get to do this. We're all special people and you need this. So that's where we're going. We're opening up platforms where we're, and again, if you are like a sorority group that we are doing work with or something like, yes, of course, here's how you might want to go there. But what's really key is the baseline understanding. What is a mentee and what is a mentor? And then when we even look at that need for sponsorship, why is it that you need somebody to kick open a door that no matter how hard you try, you can't open it? That's not unique to you. That's the way it goes. And so and again, it's really helping everyone understand you can't get from A to Z by yourself. And there are milestones along the way. And building tools. And I worked on one last week that I was testing, where if I continue to reshape what I said I was looking at it, would it be able to spit back to me instantaneously? Here's another person you need to talk to. Here's another class you might want to take. And as long as I test everything, play with everything. I think that's really going to be the cutting edge future of what mentoring is going to look like, is using technology in the right way to really give you real time actionable things based on what you said you needed, not on what I thought you might need. Very, very, very excited to see what all companies, everybody can start to think about. Questions that you want to make sure that people are asking about themselves. They're talking to yourself so that you can just gather the data, because now technology is right there for you to put it all in. And when you are using technology inside of your own particular companies that you're working with, remember, large language models learn based on what we give them to learn. The more you get your people in there using technology, it's speaking the language now of your organization, because your people are feeding it. And that's why it can get better and better at really matching, really saying what you need, what your actual technical skill needs to be. So I'm excited. I'm excited about what AI can bring to us. And the world is moving too quickly for us not to embrace it. Got to be smart. But that's another reason why we have to all be in there playing. Because it can't learn what we aren't feeding it. We have to all be feeding it in order for us to be more comfortable with it.
Absolutely. To close on a positive note, Arlene, what is the most important lesson you've learned? Which, can I just, interrupt myself asking this question to say, I feel like you've shared so many beautiful little nuggets of wisdom throughout this whole episode that I feel like anyone can listen to this and take something really important from it. But what would be one of the most important lessons that you've learned on your journey that you'd pass on to someone just starting out their journey?
What I would say, find your light. Just and embrace it. I like to read. I like poetry and things. My favorite poem is Myself. And in the beginning, it says, I have to live with myself. And so I want to be fit for myself to know. I don't want to hide on a closet shelf a lot of secrets about myself, thinking that nobody else will know. So that's the thing that the nugget that I would leave is, be brave enough to find your light. And then never, never let it be dimmed. Because as we lean into our light, we turn on the light in other people. And that is the only reason to exist as an educator, really as a good human, is to be able to bring the light to others.
Wow. Beautiful. Arlene, thank you so, so much for sharing all your knowledge, your wisdom, your experience here with us today on the NovoEdTalks podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. I know I gave you a whole lot of words, but I'm sure you'll edit it down to something great for you.
It's great. It's so great. And thank you so much to our listeners for listening to another episode of the NovoEdTalks podcast.